As I would get intel from the veteran network, I would move him from place to place throughout my night and his daytime. That's how the process went for 2 weeks. And it was really like a cat and mouse game to try and go from point A to point B to try and get him in a gate. Every day by day, moving them from one gate to the other, because we would get information saying, tell them to go to this gate, and then we would move them there. Each time they would move, there's Taliban checkpoints. Taliban knew what they were doing, so they would beat people, they would club them, they were killing people, and this is documented fact.
Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast. Folks, we have a great show in store for you today. We sit down with a retired U.S. Marine combat veteran, and we get a very unique story going to be told to us today about the part he played in helping evacuate his Afghanistan interpreter and families. But first,
hello friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
folks, our next guest is a retired U.S. Marine combat veteran, a master sergeant. Now, Anthony served 20 years in the Marine Corps, and after the tumultuous events in 2021 surrounding the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, Anthony once again demonstrated his unwavering commitment to service. He played a pivotal role in an organic veteran initiative happening stateside, aiding in the evacuation of his Afghan interpreter and 30 other Afghan allies and their families amidst chaos and uncertainty. With that, we are honored to be joined by Anthony Dominguez, retired U.S. Marine veteran. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
Yes, sir. Hey, the pleasure is all mine. I think we were destined to meet. I think our phones broke at the same exact time so we could meet and have this awesome conversation that we're getting ready to dig into today.
Yeah, AT&T, thank you.
Yeah, AT&T connected us. I mean, that could be a commercial.
I know, right?
You know, you had a very unique career. You served, abroad. You did 4 tours of combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, and you would end up building some valuable friendships and relationships with your Afghan interpreters and their families. Can you describe exactly what type of relationships that you had and what the role of an Afghan interpreter was?
Yeah, absolutely. So Afghan interpreters or Iraq interpreters, when we're overseas serving in a combat environment, they essentially become one of us. They have seen the vision and future of a new vision and future for their country at the time, and they decided to become allies with us. And what they do is they assign them to the platoons, and they literally embed into our platoon. They live with us in austere environments. They eat with us in austere environments. They patrol with us. They're in combat with us. And they go through everything that we go through for a minimal pay. But the hope is, in return, is that they have a path to immigration to here, to the United States, is what often the case is. Not all of them, but most of them, that seems to be the case. I developed relationships with my interpreters because I was a leader in my platoon. And so I had a very close working relationship with them throughout my deployments.
Now, folks, an SIV is a special immigrant visa, and these are promised by the federal government, typically to folks that put their lives in danger for the good of the United States of America. our allies and our troops on the ground to ultimately save lives. When it comes to the breakdown of the language barrier, as well as collecting intel from other people that are talking that may not know what's going on, these interpreters, again, are putting their lives on the line to protect folks like Master Sergeant Dominguez. It's been quite some time since you were in Afghanistan. It's been well over 10 years, right?
Yeah, I believe I left Afghanistan in 2011.
So you've maintained this relationship with your interpreter?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've maintained relationships with every one of my interpreters. When Facebook came on the scene, I think it was about 2008-ish. That's about the time I started deploying to Afghanistan, and we kept in contact. And they would always message me and keep in contact and see how each other is doing. Throughout the time between when I left Afghanistan up until right before the evacuation, I was getting messages from my interpreter asking if I can write him letters of recommendations for his SIV process and just try to facilitate him moving through the process.
So you're trying to go through this legal path to citizenship after everything that they have done to include put their lives on the line at risk, especially those of their family members, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So their mission over there, again, was to protect the assets on the ground, U.S. troops, allies, pick up on intel, share recon, saving lives. When this all happened, 2021, botched Afghanistan withdrawal. Now you have all of these assets on the ground, all of your interpreters that have been saving the lives of U.S. military men and women for a good 20 years. What were they thinking? What was going through their head when all of this was happening? And they're looking at Abbey saying, dude, are they going to just leave us here?
It was a frenzy. It was a panic. The amount of messages that I was getting from my interpreter was crazy. It was Facebook messages. It was emails. Please help me get out of here. The SIV process, it's not fast. The gap between when I left Afghanistan and the withdrawal, 11 years, it still had not been completed. And now the Afghans got word that that the U.S. was pulling out, and they're scrambling. So it was a lot of help me, I'm desperate, please help me, they're going to kill me once you guys leave.
These interpreters risk it all, again, for the betterment of America and for the betterment of our troops, our service members. And I cannot stress that enough. And they also made an agreement with the U.S. government that they would be granted some sort of asylum, right? This special immigration visa. And it wouldn't come for free. It would come with a great cost. And that great cost is their life and their service and their sacrifice, serving right alongside U.S. Marines, soldiers, Navy, Air Force, you name it. Now, it feels as if our country isn't holding up the end of their deal. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think they're making an attempt, but it's not good enough. You can see it in the numbers, and you can just see it in the withdrawal itself and all the controversy that surrounds the withdrawal. And I know it's 2 years past now, and there was a lot of attention and media to it. But what people don't understand or know is that there are still people desperately trying to get out, and there are still people that are trying to reunite with their families that ended up making it here.
Now, in the intro, I stated that you did play a pivotal role on helping get Afghans, the interpreters and their families, out to safety. Now, you were here in the States, basically from your home, and you would be on the phone, sat phones, and talking to folks, boots on the ground in Afghanistan, protecting these people and letting them know where to go so they could be located and rescued. Can you describe what that looked like and what your duties and what your operation was?
Yeah, for sure. So it started out, I mean, after my phone and email started blowing up from just my interpreter, I couldn't just turn away. That's not who I am, right? If someone needs my help, I am going to do everything I can to help them. That's in our nature as Marines and our nature as protectors. When these messages were coming in, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, how am I going to get you out of Afghanistan? But I just went into action, and I immediately went on to every social media platform that I have an account with, and I said, help me. I don't know how to facilitate this. How do I work this? How do I do this? I've got my Afghan interpreter whose life is in danger. Not really thinking about how many others were in the same situation because I was so hyper-focused on my interpreter. And then I started getting responses and messages, and I started going down different paths on, okay, let me do this. And a lot of it at the time was contact this congressman, contact this congressman, put their name on the list. And there was a whole bunch of information that we had to gather to submit that. And so I started going down these paths and executing all these different ways to try and get them out, which were all legal ways of trying to reach the highest level that I could. So that's what I did. And throughout that process, while I was doing that, I would get messages from other veterans saying, hey, I'm trying to get my interpreter out. And then it just kind of was a chain reaction. And when it ended up happening for 2 weeks, I became a part of these groups in different chat groups, whether it was on Signal. Most of it was on Signal because it's the most secure app. And we were gathering in these groups, all beginning to share intel, share contact information with other people, and share different ways that we were trying to get our interpreters out. In that, we ended up, personally, I ended up starting to do the research on which battalions were over there. And did I know anyone? Because I just freshly retired. I was only a year and a half, maybe 2 years or so out of the Marine Corps. So I ended up knowing the battalion commander who I served with when he was a company commander. He was battalion commander with the unit on the ground. I ended up knowing a few people, actually. The gunner that was there, I served with, and some other people. And then we ended up getting the phone numbers of the gunnery sergeants, the guys making all things happen on the ground at the gates because they had phones. So I ended up getting their phone number, and we were communicating directly through text or Signal. So it was a lot of information sharing, and then people started coming in with intelligence, where they were creating map chips of HKIA, putting where Taliban checkpoints were. And so we would receive this information and then start navigating our interpreter around the Taliban checkpoints and trying to navigate them safely to the gates where we can, get them received in. It was very complex for being an operations center in my bedroom from about 11 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. And this is while I was holding a full-time job a brand new job at that.
Incredible. Now, I think this next question here is really going to set the tone for the rest of what we're going to talk about. Now, was there ever any advance notice given to these interpreters on what was going to happen on that botched withdrawal when we just cut and run?
The State Department did say that they were sending out notifications as far as, actions that people needed to take. So I think there was, as far as I don't think they were sending out timelines, because then you might be tipping off too much. But then again, precedent has been set by a prior president saying that we were going to leave on this date, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I think there was, but it still wasn't enough time, right, to get thousands and thousands of people out in a short amount of time from an airport that doesn't support operational capability to do so.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get any communication, if you will, from your interpreters, discussing that they were so surprised and what they saw and the fashion of how we pulled out of Afghanistan and everything that happened at Abbey Gate after a 20-year war on terror, working with a lot of squared away Marines and units and, everybody that they were attached to automatically see like this mass chaos unfold before their very eyes?
Yeah, they were surprised. When they get told, the U.S. is leaving Afghanistan, and they've been trying to work through the SIV process for years and years and years, and now it's like you've got, this amount of time. Go. What do you do when you're just an ordinary citizen and you're trying to deal with the U.S. government for the last, X amount of years to get your SIV pushed through? It was a lot of heartbreak, a lot of letdown. A lot of them felt betrayed. And I think we as veterans and the organic veteran group that stood up and said, there's no way we're going to let this happen. We have to help. I think those interpreters and Afghans found comfort in knowing that their fellow brothers didn't turn their back on them. Maybe our government did, but not us.
Yeah, and that really strikes a chord with me, and I know with probably a lot of people that are listening right now, is that, we have a massive southern border crisis where we have millions of unchecked, unvetted folks coming in from 160 different countries that are just, here you go, come right on in, free medical, free dental. We're going to give you, prepaid, debit cards. We're going to give you everything you need. And not only that, but we're going to ensure that we continue to give you everything you need to succeed. And really, they're not even like giving them a job. They're just giving them all these handouts and resources from all these communities. And what have they done for the United States of America except for cross illegally? Nothing. So now you have these Afghan interpreters who have been putting their lives on the line for 20 years, have been working toward a path to citizenship in an honorable way that has saved thousands of U.S. military service members. And now they have been betrayed by the very government that has sworn to protect them after this war has finished. Where are we at right now with getting the rest of these SIVs pushed through and getting these Afghan interpreters back here to the United States so they won't be killed by the new regime in Afghanistan right now?
Yeah, great question. According to a State Department website, as of September 2023, 11,590 visas remain from the 120,988 applications submitted. The program for the SIVs sunsets December 31st of this year. Only 26,910 principal applicants have been given immigration pathway to the U.S. 26,910 out of the 120,988 applications submitted. I don't understand that.
So we're looking at 96,000 Afghan interpreters right now that are in Afghanistan that are in harm's way right now.
Possibly. My interpreter, who I was able to get out of Afghanistan, he was one of the people I was able to get out. As soon as he arrived to the United States, he made his way to Texas, and that's where he asked to be relocated. I think a big part of that because I was here. As soon as he got here, I started researching what's the next steps for him, because I just didn't have any faith in the SIV process because of those numbers I just read. So we looked it up. I hired a lawyer for him, and we started the asylum process. We did that almost 3 or 4 months after he arrived in 2020. He arrived December 2021. So it was early 2022. We did the asylum process. Here we are going on 2 years and some change, and he still has not heard anything back from the asylum case. Now, let me tell you that this man is without his family. His wife and children are back in Afghanistan. They got separated because his wife and children fell ill as they were maneuvering around throughout the 2-week process of trying to get out of Afghanistan, in the sewers, getting sick, the beatings from the Taliban, the heat, lack of water. His wife fell ill, so he made a decision to take him back to the home. And then the time was ticking away. There was days, and I said, you've got to make the decision now whether you're going to leave with them or without them. And I can't imagine having to be put in that situation. And he made a command decision that it was better for him to be around than him to be killed in Afghanistan. That's a tough choice. He had to leave his family in Afghanistan because they were sick in order to get out. And we ended up getting him out, and he's here now, but he's without his family. And without an SIV, without an asylum granted, he cannot reunite with his family. It's broken.
Man, I just can't. Our system here, it's not broken. I mean, it's shattered.
Yeah.
And, hearing stories of this are absolutely just gut wrenching. I want you to elaborate on that 2 weeks that they had to get out and to get evacuated when all this mass chaos was going on after we left. Soon thereafter, was it the Taliban that retook and reclaimed control immediately?
Yeah.
So what was it like maneuvering and getting around Afghanistan when the Taliban had retaken over all the positions that we have given up? And describe like you were saying, like the sewers and, the hot weather and the tunnels. Can you paint us a picture of what that looked like?
Yeah, for sure. So for my interpreter, he had to come from a city outside of Kabul. So he had to make his way with his family to Kabul, and the Taliban collapsed in on Kabul so fast that they set up checkpoints. So everybody that was flowing to Kabul and HKIA to get out had to try to maneuver through these checkpoints. And it was pretty obvious to the Taliban. They're not completely stupid. So they were beating a lot of the interpreters or the young males, to include women, as my interpreter was trying to make it to Kabul. When he got to Kabul, it was a matter of which gate do you go to. That was where the veteran network really played a pivotal role, because people stepped up, man, and it was amazing. I think for me, 20 plus years in the Marine Corps, multiple combat tours, for whatever reason, being a part of this, I hold in the highest regard, because I wasn't in uniform anymore. Any of the veterans that took part in this, we weren't in uniform. We were veterans, but our oath never expires. And that's what we truly believe. And we owed it to them to try and help them. So during those 2 weeks, it was trying to get as much information as we can. And every day by day, moving them from one gate to the other, because we would get information saying, tell them to go to this gate. And then we would move them there. But each time they would move, there's Taliban checkpoints. Taliban knew what they were doing. So they would beat people. They would club them. They were killing people. And this is documented fact. And so he had to try and maneuver around that, on top of it was summertime. It's August in Afghanistan. It's not like there's cold water places that you can just go grab water. There was a canal system that was kind of a barrier between where U.S. troops were. And in this canal system was dirty water. People had nowhere else to do their business, right? So it was all inside these canals. And he would send me pictures of him and his family amongst a sea of people, and then go on live with me on Facebook and show me the Taliban walking around, beating people, taking pictures. And I saved all those. I don't know why, but I saved them all. As I would get intel from the veteran network, I would move him from place to place throughout my night and his daytime. And that's how the process went for 2 weeks. And it was really like a cat and mouse game to try and go from point A to point B to try and get him in a gate. Now, just because we got them to a gate, trying to get them across was the other challenge. The way that would work is I had gotten a contact to a gunny that was working the gate. and I was directly communicating with him. And so what I did was I told him, send him a picture of my interpreter, and I told him, create a challenge and password. For me, it was Texas and spring. That's the only thing I could think of at the time. And I told my interpreter, when you see him, I want you to yell out, or he's going to yell out Texas, you yell out spring. And so that was the process that I came up with. The guy on the ground, the gunny, was like, yeah, I'm looking for him. I can't find him. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people, trying to get in. How does he know what he looks like? He knows what I sent him a picture, but I mean, it's a sea of people. So I was unsuccessful in all those attempts. And as the clock was ticking down, one of my first courses of action was submitting his information to Congressman Seth Moulton. And I got a phone call from one of his staffers that said, we want to get him out of the country. Do you have contact with him? And I said, absolutely. So I passed that information to them. They had people on the ground, and I don't know how they did it, but they told him to go to a location, which was some back secret gate, and just to wait there. He said that before he knew it, he was tapped on the shoulder, and they had given him another challenge and password. I think it was Patriots and Tom Brady. He gave him the challenge, and they pulled him in and took him in the gate. And I was absolutely relieved. And so that's kind of how the process was. It was very cat and mouse. It was an all-night thing for a couple weeks, and it was a lot of collaboration with a lot of veterans. I mean, I was on the phone with a 3-star general that was actually the commander in Afghanistan when I was there for all of the Marines. This is how high up at the veteran level we were all working. Now, he is retired and he was out at the time, but that's the level of involvement that veterans were taking part in it.
Did you ever believe in your wildest dreams, after serving 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, honorably and courageously in combat zones, that you would ever have to help facilitate the rescue of interpreters that were promised asylum after a botched withdrawal on your own time and on your own dime, not even being active, being basically a civilian from your home in Texas, facilitating the movement of bodies to be rescued at certain checkpoints and passwords and passcodes with other veterans that were there basically representing themselves.
Yeah.
Did you ever believe that that you would see the United States ever in a position like this?
First of all, I would have never have thought in a million years that I would have done anything like this or be a part of anything like this outside of uniform. I fully expected to do it while I was in uniform, as that's what I signed up for, right? But to do it as a civilian in my bedroom with a laptop, a phone, and an iPad, trying to maintain different chats of everything going on and trying to maintain situational awareness throughout all of the night, and I still had to work the next day, a brand new role that I had taken. I would have never have thought that in a million years. And I was very, very, very disappointed in our government. I was very disappointed in the way that was executed. And I think, the jury's out, the facts are out, and it was failed. It was a failed evacuation. But at the same time, should I be surprised? History repeated itself. And why we didn't learn from the Vietnam War? I mean, you wear stars because you're supposed to be the smartest minds in the military. Like, I would imagine the highest levels are advising that, hey, we've seen this before. Let's not make the same mistake twice. But here we are.
It's as if they're doing it on purpose. Right now, with the whole Israel conflict and the Iranian proxies and everyone that we're sending back to the Middle East, again, we've given these people $8 billion head start, not just in military equipment, but in pallets of cash and bullets and uniforms and, just all sorts of things. Now, The optics on this, obviously, really bad. But the problem I have is the failed leadership. I mean, at the highest levels. And again, I don't think you could fail that bad unless you were trying to do it on purpose. And the sad thing is that you could join right now and go to boot camp in any branch of service. And they're going to say leadership. And they're going to say lead by example, honor, courage, commitment, the hallmarks of a Marine. Leave no man behind. Have these words become empty?
Yeah, absolutely. We're taught lead by example, right? It's not what you say, it's what you're doing, right? To the people that are watching, it's how you live day to day through your actions. And I believe I lived up to what they taught me, and I still do. I mean, I did it post-service. I didn't have to do what I did, but like I said early on, is I took an oath for this country. And to me and my fellow veterans, that oath does not expire, period. We serve to do what's right, not, we don't serve a person or a man or a woman. We serve to do what's right. And it doesn't matter who's in position if it's about what's morally right and what's justly right, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. And what we have done here is a massive disservice to these men and women, again, that have put it all on the line to protect tens and thousands of troops. And just imagine the lives that were saved, with IEDs and ambushes and everything else that they can kind of, take in that intel and then share it with the higher ups and, from air to, to ground and warnings. Right now, we're back in the Middle East. So when we need interpreters, ain't nobody going to be standing in that line raising their hand to help out the United States of America, are they?
Right. It's very fresh. It's still fresh in the minds of everyone. I mean, there's people still trying to get out,
Do you think this has perhaps changed the attitudes of a lot of these interpreters who gave it all for the red, white, and blue? Now they're thinking, I've been betrayed, and now they're the enemy.
I definitely know that they feel absolutely betrayed. I don't know about future interpreters. I mean, it would be pretty obvious to me if, we found ourselves in that situation again. I would think they would think twice. It's not a good place to be in when you don't know who to turn to.
Yeah, it's like you're living a lie. You're working hard and you're building these relationships. Look, you being a Marine, you have this interpreter. You didn't just become best friends with this guy overnight. I mean, there's major culture differences here. I mean, you're looking at, okay, this guy, is he the enemy or can I trust him? That takes so much time to build that trust and that confidence and that relationship and that friendship that is forged through blood and service and sacrifice. And that right there is worth its weight in gold. Now, when you first got these interpreters, what was that culture difference like? And how long did it take to build these relationships?
I mean, yeah, the culture difference is pretty stark, right? It's a huge contrast. And generally, the interpreters that are being assigned to the platoons, they're young guys. They're young guys like us. The infantry, probably the average age is 18, 19, I would imagine, as the average, because like General Mattis taught me, the root word of infantry is infant. It's nothing but young men, and now young men and women. But during my time, it was all young men. And that's the age level of the interpreters. So, when you come together, you got these two young men from different part of the world, but believe in the same cause, right? And that's really the only bond or commonality we need to have at that moment. We don't have anything else in common except for the fact that we believe in the same mission. And then the bonds are built through shared suffering, right? Living in austere environments, putting our lives on the line for each other. willing to die for each other. There is no stronger bond that you can create than when you go through those situations. The culture difference, it's always there, but the bond overcomes that. It's much more powerful.
How long did it take to get to that point, to knowing that you had full trust in your interpreter?
I would probably say at least within a month. I mean, because there's always that filling out process, right?
Mm-hmm.
You never know. There was a lot of, I think what they call blue on green over there, where Afghans were turning their weapons on U.S. troops.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that little, hairs that stick up in the back of your neck, but you quickly learn. I mean, being someone that's in combat, your senses, your height of awareness is at its peak. So you quickly begin to realize who the enemy is and who's not, and who really has your back, especially in those situations. So I would say probably within a month, you know.
Did you ever ask your interpreter why he was out there doing what he was doing for you?
I mean, I can't remember, but if I asked that particular question, but I had a lot of conversations with my interpreters because they would be with me. I was a platoon commander, and so I always needed an interpreter if I was out on patrols, because I was engaging with the locals a lot. I was doing key leader engagements. I spent a lot of time with my interpreter. He was my right-hand man. Whether we were on the base and I needed to talk to the local Afghan National Police chief, I'd bring my interpreter. If I was walking around and I knew I was going to encounter someone, I'd bring my interpreter. So we had many conversations about what the future of Afghanistan would look like, what their wishes for it would look like, what their plans were. And all of them told me, I can't wait to go to the United States, and I would show them pictures of different cities in America, like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, and they would just be amazed. And, I mean, we're talking a place where there's mud huts still,
What type of Afghanistan did your interpreter want when he was describing that to you? What type of country did he want to live in?
A free Afghanistan. That was it. The freedom to say what you want to say, think what you want to think, do what you want to do, and just try and improve your life for yourself and for your family. That's all they ever wanted, was a free Afghanistan. I mean, we live in the greatest country in the world, even with all our faults, because we're free. And that's all they wanted. I would say the common thread in the countries and the combat I've been to is people want to just live peacefully. People want to live peacefully, and they want the freedom to do what makes them happy. That's all.
Yeah, I think the United States really needs to stand up and look at itself in the mirror and really come to Jesus on this and say, all right, so if we're allowing all these people in over here, unchecked, unvetted, they've never done anything for this country, and all these people over here have given everything for this country, we need to stop everything what's going on our border right now and at least get these people in here first before anything on the southern border is done. Because to me, again, those people, those interpreters are really no different. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to give them the title Marine, but they were with you doing Marine Corps stuff and protecting you and your fellow Marines in combat. So basically, honorary type Marines, soldiers, whatever it may be, those men and women deserve that SIV, that special immigration visa, because it was earned.
Yeah.
And it was paid for in blood, service, and sacrifice. And it sickens me to know that only 26,910 have been granted out of the 120,988. Where do we go from here, and how can we get those other interpreters back here to the United States?
Yeah, well, it starts with our members of Congress and those who make the law, right? And I would urge everyone that is watching this, that is listening to this, whether they're driving in their car or whatever platform they're listening to, is if this is important to you, if you agree with our points of view here, you need to reach out to your representatives, and you need to tell them that the program, it needs to be extended past December 31st, 2024, and They need to fix it somehow. And I don't have the answer for that. And that's not my job to have the answer for it. But all I know is, why do we have so many people still without families or still without a path to immigration after honorably serving our country? I don't understand.
And you know, it's not your job. It's not your job. But you know what? I had the same job too. I had to go fight Congress to change a 74-year VA legal loophole so there wasn't 20 million American veterans on the hook if something happened to them while getting care in a VA hospital. It shouldn't take just a regular old citizen to stand up and become a citizen advocate. But again, that's who we are as Marines. Honor, courage, commitment, the hallmarks of a Marine, the way we're trained.
Yeah.
But it's a one-way street, right? You know, it's only a certain type of people are operating by the rules, but the other half, they can do what they want. And that right there, again, is at the highest levels. And that right there, again, it is asinine to even have this conversation, because it's not your job. It's the job of the DOD. It's the job of the Pentagon to get those people out of there, to put SEALs on the ground or recon teams or, you know, SWIFT teams out there to set up these private rescues or, you know, these missions to get these interpreters out and their families out and safe, again, before they're all just killed. Now, is it easy for the Taliban to spot an interpreter in Afghanistan?
From what my interpreter told me, yes, very much so. In fact, after he was here in Texas, they had went to his house. They went to his father's house, and they were looking for him. And why is that? Is because our government gave the Taliban a list of people who were our allies to help let them through to the gate. They ended up going and looking for a lot of the interpreters. They were there, and his wife was afraid. His children were afraid. Luckily, the elders of the village and I believe his father told them that he left to another country to work temporarily. But yeah.
You know, I know you're an honorable man. You know, I've read your resume. You know, I've met you in person. You know, we've had some conversations. You're squared away, and you're a great American. Knowing what you know now and everything that you've been through, Anthony, would you sign on that dotted line today and join the Marine Corps as an 18-year-old coming out of high school?
If I was 18 years old, in the mindset that I was in at the time, I would do it again. I would absolutely 100% do it again. If you was to ask me now, being a wiser old man, I would have some reservations. I'll just leave it at that.
You know, I believe that we all deserve transparency and accountability, you know, especially when it comes to human life. The courage here, is second to none. One, to stand up and go against your motherland, your country, basically. I mean, even though they're a terrorist nation, I mean, the majority of all those people there stand in unison with those regimes. And to go against that and say, no, I want better and I want to help out the Americans because I believe in the American people and I believe in the Marines on the ground and these relationships. And then all of a sudden, again, it sucks, dude.
Yeah.
You know, Anthony, you had stated that folks that are listening to this should call their member of Congress and have them look into and fulfill the obligation and the promise that we gave to these Afghan interpreters. There was 120,988 applications, and the United States has given 26,000 of those. And so we have, 95,000 that are still out there in Afghanistan. You say, call your member of Congress. Well, again, there's only so much a member of Congress can do. shouldn't it fall on the duty of somebody maybe at the Pentagon or at the DOD to, when they wake up in the morning and say, we've done this all wrong? Because everything begins and ends at the Pentagon. Everything begins and ends with the Department of Defense, ultimately. In having a freshman congressman going in there and telling a 4-star, hey, we need to go get 95,000 Afghan interpreters out of Afghanistan, they're going to look at that member of Congress and they're going to laugh, because a lot of these guys don't care, and they're politicians themselves, and if it doesn't do anything for them, well, they're going to disengage or whatever it may be. So wouldn't you think that this falls squarely on the backs of these generals and perhaps even the president of the United States to make an executive decision to go in there and say, hey, we're going to rescue all these people and we're going to grant them all SIVs today, and this is how we're going to do it, and and here's what the mission is?
Yeah, I think this ultimately rests on the shoulders of the president of the United States, and not the DOD. The generals in the DOD are there to make recommendations and be advisors to the commander-in-chief. It's the commander-in-chief's ultimate responsibility to make these decisions in unison with Congress, right? A member of Congress has more power than any 4-star general. Now, the general may have more experience, but that member of Congress is duly elected, and between Congress and the president, it's their jobs to figure this out. DOD are advisors. Now, what I believe is that within the DOD, we need more people like Stuart Scheller, someone who understands that the call that's being made is the wrong call, morally and ethically and justly. And to say that this is not right, and who's willing to not just be the yes man, right? That's the duty of the generals, I believe. And that's not happening. And it's very, very disappointing. And again, I am very concerned for our country.
There are so many Americans out there that are always wanting to help. I mean, our values, our history, our traditions as Americans, it's honorable. And people are now looking at the government as, dude, it's just an empty letter. It's just an empty suit. My voice doesn't mean anything. My voice isn't even being heard. I'm just a nobody. And unfortunately, that has become the new normal for many Americans. The vast majority of Americans do feel this way, because I get a lot of calls from veterans that are going through some hard times and some hard struggles within the VA, and they can't even get simple answers to some really easy questions answered, let alone try to get 95,000 Afghanistan interpreters out of their country. Describe a day in the life of Anthony in Afghanistan with your Marines and with your interpreter.
Yeah, day in the life consisted of, I was infantry, so we were always put in the austere environments. So we would have a little patrol base out in the middle of nowhere, responsible for all this territory, essentially, to deny the enemy freedom of movement. And so a day in the life would be, all right, let's schedule our patrols in different areas of wherever we were responsible for, and deny the enemy freedom of movement. Basically, they don't get to do what they want to do, which was terrorize and, do any of the bad stuff that they were up to. And so generally we would have, 2 to 3 patrols a day. We would, always change it up. We didn't want to set patterns. We would meet with locals and kind of get their feedback, what they were looking to do to improve their lives, how can we help? And then we would broker aid for them, whether it be water projects, well projects, farming projects, for agriculture, try and reduce the poppy, trade to more of agriculture, food, or whatever resource that their country could provide. And then, of course, the post standing to keep our little base secure. Mm-hmm. So that was a typical day in the life of a infantry platoon.
Do you believe that there could be a different reason as to why the United States of America isn't bringing these interpreters over? Could it be that there may be a lack of trust there? If we ever did have another war, that we would have so many of these Afghans here that may break that allegiance?
That's a good question. I certainly would hope that's not the sentiment from the powers that be, lack of trust, because how do you not trust people that were willing to lay down their lives for you every single day? And a lot of them did. You know, I can't believe that. Why so many are being left behind? Honestly, I think it's a lack of organization at the highest levels. I believe that things were done in haste and not well thought out. And I believe that the people that should have said, hey, this is not right, there should be alternative courses of actions that would facilitate us getting all of our interpreters out and fellow Americans out. That should have happened, and it didn't, except for one guy. He was made the scapegoat.
So your interpreter's family is in Afghanistan as we speak right now.
That's correct.
Do they have a functioning commercial airport in Afghanistan right now?
They have, yeah. HKIA is still open and operating, as far as I know.
So they have civilian flights that are going in and out of Afghanistan to different countries in the Middle East? Mm-hmm. And do any of those flights go outside of the Middle East? Like, say, like going to Europe, is there a way for them to actually try to escape?
So I don't know all of Afghanistan's where they allow flights to come in and out of. I do know that I do know that they do fly to neighboring countries. But I think the important thing to remember is the Taliban is the government now, so they control and they monitor who's coming in, who's coming out. Just like the United States, we know who's coming in. Well, we're supposed to know legally who's coming in, right? And the Taliban is the same thing in their country. So they know, and no one's getting to a place that's where they can escape, because they want to keep everything and keep the power and the rule of law of Sharia law in Afghanistan. Yeah,
Sharia law. That's what's all. It all boils down to that. And it's funny you say, even Afghanistan protects their borders, and they're under, Taliban control. So the greatest country in the history of mankind can't even protect its borders. It's maddening, and things like this should never, ever, ever be happening, especially when you give that oath and you give that promise and you serve with courage alongside of America's finest to protect them, to protect their lives, and to lay yours down, and to risk everything, to go against the allegiance of your own country or the Taliban or whatever terrorist regime that is operating within that interpreter's country. And again, the betrayal here, the letdown is something, it's about as egregious as it can be. I mean, a stab in the back? Nah. I mean, that's a kill shot right there. So folks, I urge you, just pick up your phone, contact your member of Congress, let them know that there are still over 95,000 Afghan interpreters right now in Afghanistan that need to get their SIVs and be sent back here to the United States of America so they can begin to live their life that they work so hard for and lay down their own for the good of this country. All right, Anthony, what are your final words on this? what kind of a call to action can you put out there?
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts or my final words would be, one, please contact your representatives and urge them to extend the SIV application deadline and to fix the process of the SIV program. Because the numbers are there and they don't lie. Lastly, I would say that America has some amazing veterans. I can't believe how many people are willing to still do what it takes to do the right thing, even if they're out of uniform. And I hope that's not lost on our fellow Americans. I hope that they know that no matter what, we are always willing to do the right thing for this country. But it's got to be the right thing.
Amen. And that oath of service never expires. And it doesn't matter if we're here, if we're there, if we're over there. You got a fellow American or really any human is in distress. We are protectors first. Anthony, thank you for joining us today, man. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the military and veteran community. Your service, sacrifice, and dedication to our great nation is truly admirable.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen to this podcast. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Look at that. I'm moving up in the world. Simply search Today with Tally. Also learn more about me and my personal story, and perhaps even get my new book at briantally.com. That's briantally.com. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night. Semper Fi. God bless.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.